What is happening, everybody? We are the Zen Heads. This is Ben. That is
Rick.
we got to work on that.
I know. I think it might be going the other direction too.
I know in the last video it did too. We are the Zen Heads, and what we do is I was almost going to say each week, but it's almost like every time we get a chance to speak about topics and things that are going on in the real life, we try to bring some perspective and kind of, our point of view of things, and hopefully it can help out. With no further ado, we're going to get right into it. And this is actually a comment suggestion, and it comes from King underscore. We'll put it up on the thing or in the comments. How has the pandemic changed your outlook on things? And I love this because that is a very real life situation going on. So Rick, I'll start with you. How has the pandemic changed the way you look at things?
So we're stuck inside for the most part. Now, I've been working this entire time, but when you're scrolling through something like Facebook and you see that little middle river of stuff, you start to see a little bit of a divide on opinions. And it kind of has I have a large group of people that say come on, enough with the mask. Let's get going back on the horse and get back to work and whatnot. And then I see the other side of friends that are the mask is important. Let's treat it seriously and such. And you sort of see this divide, and it's opened my eyes a bit on how we look at other people and their opinions of things and how they want to take apart their life. Whereas, let's say I were to be on one side of the fence or the other side of the fence with, wear the mask all the time and whatnot, or we don't need a mask. Let's evolve like some of the other countries have been doing. And it really comes down to the only victory would be if you were to win somebody over to your side. And that only means that you're really converting their thoughts over to you, and that doesn't really feel like a victory.
Yeah.
So that's what I really recognized was a bit of a divide, the kind of us and them game. And there's no real win there. There's just basically respecting somebody else, whatever they choose, whether it's bringing up a puppy around because it helps their emotional stability, that's fine. It just comes down to respecting their choice, because there's plenty of crazy stuff that I do, and I'd be foolish to not expect respect from somebody else as well.
Absolutely. I think you hit it right on the head. I think a lot, if you can kind of remove yourself from the back and forth, what you're seeing is kind of what the world's been at in its base form, except the conversations used to be about sports and music. Who's the greatest basketball player of all time? Who's the greatest band of all time? And people would be in the comments just ripping each other apart, oh, you effing idiot. How can you think this? And now when we get a real life, pandemic going on, you're seeing that people hold that opinion a little bit closer to the chest, and they almost defend it at all cost. And it's you're either right or you're with me. You're right and you're with me, or you're almost exiled from my thoughts. And I do find it to be a little bit wild that there's been just such a divide instead of a unity of kind of things. And kind of, I don't want to say to contradict myself, I've seen more unity based on the amount of information I'm taking in. So I've kind of chose to pair up with the unity information where people are banding together and they're kind of moving in that direction. That's just the information I've chose to kind of bring into myself, because the other stuff, it was playing a huge part of my mental health. I was just taking a beating day in and day out, trying to figure out what's right and what's wrong, who's right, who's wrong, who do I listen to, what is a valid source to take information from. It was just crazy for a really long time until I kind of got in my groove.
Right. It makes you think of during elections and whatnot, you kind of have the different sides, and it's just another challenge. We could talk to our grandparents' generation. Right now, we're oh, it's the end of the world, and everybody's trying to spook that. I mean, take a look at the news. Those are the ones that are capitalizing off of this much. Remind yourself that they are a business. They are a business to make money. when you're
Hmm.
watching the news and you're thinking this kind of like unfiltered information so you can keep up to date with what's going on, they're a business. That's how they're filtering the information and giving it to you. So the ones that are benefiting from that, news is one of the categories, and they want to make it look like scary. Oh my gosh, don't turn away, keep watching, and they keep feeding you this stuff. So we have to be very aware of those filters. Like you were saying, like you're getting attacked by all this information. We have to be aware that what's coming in with the news part. And like I said, with the other generations, ask them. They've been through the flu pandemic. They've been through the depression. They've been through World War II. Every single one, I'm sure people were panhandling. I'm not sorry, or just peddling the whole idea of this one's the end. This is the end of the world. They're throwing that at us when kind of we have this going through and people are trying to scare each other. So, but I'm
Yeah, one
glad that
time. No, go ahead. Sorry.
I was kind of like tailing off of your point was I'm glad that there's also been a great unity in it too.
Yeah, I made this bonehead comment one time back when me and my girlfriend lived in Philly, and I said we had a few drinks, and I was like, "Science isn't real," and she was like, "What? Like, how do you say something like that?" And I was like, "Because in school, I said like, what makes it real?" And they said, "Well, if it's not science, it's a theory." And I was like, okay, but what makes the science of it like a fact? Like like you just telling me you have to believe this doesn't convince me. And because I wasn't the best student, but I have picked up at a young age, kind of just, I always picked up on patterns. I always found out that once a scientific, fact was discovered, it was overturned like 5 years later. And then and then all of a sudden that was now science and that was now fact. So, that's what I meant by it. And that I'm kind of, you're seeing it firsthand. You're seeing the CDC and the WHO say, this is how it spreads. This is what happens. We're the experts. Listen to us, blah, blah, blah. And then 4 months later, they're like, you know what? Pump the brakes.
My
Pump
bad.
them. My bad. I was wrong. We got to open this back up, and this is how it actually spreads. And it goes back to like me kind of saying that bonehead comment, science isn't real. And I kind of just think about that all the time. I'm like, it's a fact until it's not.
Yeah,
Right?
that was a
It's a fact until it's convenient to not be a fact. And I think that's kind of what we're seeing is, depending on what media source you listen to, depending on what person you follow on Instagram or whatever, you're just seeing how misinformation constantly gets thrown around, because no one actually, the people we go to for expert advice don't know what the hell they're talking about. So like, for anyone to go on and pretend to be a doctor or have a doctor's opinion is just unbelievable. So the way I've looked at this is, I feel I know what's right for me and those around me. And that's kind of like going back to ancient times. Like, I don't need some news anchor to tell me what is right and what's wrong. I'm like, hey, like, I live in Florida. We're not doing so hot down here. Like, so I'm not leaving. Like, if you thought I wasn't leaving back in March, now that we're just breaking records every day, like, fuck no, I'm not leaving. Like, what do you like? I'm working from home. Like, that's what I'm doing. It's crazy, man. It's absolutely crazy.
that's a funny point when you're talking about facts. So facts are just what is it, variables over a longer period of time.
Mhm.
That's really is until it gets overturned. Uh, now you got me stuck on that part now.
Let's run with that. Because I'm a firm believer that just goes back to the school system. Like, they tell you this is right, and we've learned a lot of misinformation that was right, and now we're seeing like history books overturned and stuff like that. Like, so I think we all have to have an open mind and be like okay with the fact that there are other solutions, there are other possibilities, other outcomes. And I think the more we open our mind to that, that's where, I mean, we call ourselves Zen heads. I think that's kind of the whole idea of Zen, is kind of accepting reality as what it is and not trying to paint it to, be our own picture.
Right. And when somebody doesn't kind of follow that same picture, we try to go for that victory to win them over, see our
Mhm.
side, be a Republican, be a Democrat, whatever it may be.
Yep.
And then that becomes our victory and kind of our little happy place. Yeah, we got it. And then we recruit them over. But it all comes, nobody knows what the hell's going on. And I can say that for every single category out there. What's going to happen after you die? I don't know. What's going to
Yeah.
happen before you came in this world? I don't know. So everybody's got a theory that they bought into,
Mhm.
really. And I don't mean that to water it down or degrade it at all, but that's as I'm kicking my table here. But like, but that's what it really comes down to. You just invest your time and your thoughts into something that you want to follow and you kind of believe in. And there's going to be such a variation. It's always going to be overruled, overturned, and it just changes like those facts and whatnot. You just have to respect each other and say, okay, that's your angle, that's your approach to take it. I need to show some respect for it. And then there's
Yeah.
also that line as well. So let's say, just picking out of a hat, like my thing is, all right, mask, stay 6 feet away, whatever I want to follow, whatever guideline. When somebody starts intruding on that, then I have to kind of step back and say, hey, listen, man, this is kind of my perimeter here, and we have to sort of respect each other the best we can about that. And if I'm on the other side of the fence and I'm like, yeah, we're fine, let's go outside and play and whatnot, and somebody else is doing they got the mask and everything like that, I've been recognizing, especially lately because of this pandemic, that before I was like, God, you're outside. What are you thinking? Hello. Now
Yeah.
that I'm slowly going from squint to open eyes, then I'm like, okay, that's your thing. Like that's your belief. Whereas I got an endless list of stupid beliefs, I'm sure, that everybody looks at me and says, look at this knucklehead. It's all through the lenses. And
Yeah.
it comes down to just respect and what somebody wants to go for. And we could probably copy that over all this us and them situations.
It's wild to think about it, how what we talk about, they all tie into each other. I mean, because imagine if you didn't have to take on each fight and each battle to try to prove you're right or try to recruit those people to think your way. Imagine just accepting things for the way they are. And I think that comes into being able to choose the circle you keep in your inner circle and stuff like that. Like those other people don't have to play that big of a role in your life. And that's no disrespect to them. And that's not calling you selfish. That's just, hey, I am very protective of, the information I take in, the people I surround myself in, because surprise, I want to be happy. Like I want to enjoy life. And if I constantly keep filling that pie chart up with things that are just draining my energy, I'm not going to be happy. And that's just as common sense as it gets. If, defending your points and going into debates and about stuff makes you happy, that's okay. Like you surround yourself with people that enjoy doing the same. And I come from the school of thought that it has to be with respect, that, what's said in a debate is said in a debate. It's not malicious. It's, this is the way I think. And for me, I'm not trying to prove you wrong. I'm more trying to validate myself. And I think that's what people have to understand is they're not really arguing with other people. I honestly believe they're trying to argue with themselves and prove themselves right. They're not trying to prove other people wrong. It's a wild concept, but that's something I really do think.
Yeah, I think, wow, that's a great way to look at it. Because really, we're just stuck in our own heads. And this is our own little projection movie. You're right. It doesn't matter what anybody else is doing out there. It doesn't matter. In the end of the day, you go home and you're like, all right, did I get my victory? did I
Yeah,
get my win? Did I win them over? Or whatever your target was. That's the only thing that matters. And I think that's a watered down victory. But if you
which
go
is
at it with just
crazy.
good old, hey, let's debate and discuss, and you kind of have an equal respect and an open mind, the value at the end is so much truer, so much more true. But like when you go at it for the us and them and try to win somebody over on your own point of view, it's going to be so watered down. It's like that objective where you finally get there and you're like, oh, I made it, and you look and you realize that your time was robbed from you.
Yeah,
It's
it's
no
like
real
John
victory.
Travolta in Pulp Fiction, just like,
Yeah. What now?
yeah, like what the fuck? It's so true, man. Has anyone ever laid in bed at the end of the night and been like, "Oh, I won that argument," and like or do they forget about it? You know, like I've never once, when I've had like a serious argument, thought, did I win or lose? Like, you know, like I really have always just thought about the interaction. It's never been like I won that fight, or I've certainly, I can't remember it now. So like, is it really that important to be right? Or are you just trying to validate yourself and your beliefs and your belief system? Because I think that's what a lot of it is people are really unsure of their own thoughts, their own beliefs, their own lives, their own lives. Because as much as we want to believe there's a schedule and agenda, things are constantly thrown in the way to kind of prove that, hey, like what you thought was happening isn't happening. For Christ's sake, we have a giant pandemic going on. Like anybody who had any sort of plans was just kind of like, well, that's in the trash now. You know what I mean? Like, so this idea of being right and wrong is like such an elusive belief. Like maybe you're right for you, but not right for the other person. You know, like it's okay, and that's okay.
Right. It makes you think kind of in victory in general. All the elements of
Mhm.
victory. It's what's the real end goal of it? It's just kind of satisfy the ego. You can just feed that. It's like, yeah, I got a victory. Yeah, I made it to a certain level, blah, blah, blah. When you're convincing somebody over to your side or whatnot, it waters it all down and kind of makes you realize, hey, what is this really all about? And
It
with a
almost
situation
makes you.
like this, yeah, with a situation like this, it just, again, I keep getting stuck with respecting each other and kind of
Mhm.
like you said it really great. You're not going to win, but kind of with that sort of open mind debate.
I think a lot of what I think of too is, you mentioned it. It's not like what is in the victory. I think what's in the victory is like, what are you actually fighting for? You know, it's, I would say 90% of the time, and I'm just throwing out complete bullshit percentages. I don't have any data to back this up. 90% of people aren't actually arguing what they're arguing about. There's something else that's fueling that fire. Right. And that's something I've always been trying to be conscious of when, you know, someone lashes out at me or lashes out at somebody else. And you see all of it going on, this internet bickering. The first thing I always think of is like, what are they going through? What has happened to them to make them think this way? Um, so I don't ever really hear the words that people say. I usually try to find the intentions behind them and the story behind it, because then I can kind of not form my opinion on what they're talking about. I can form my opinion on them. You can be a total jackass and be saying all this stuff at me, but if I know where you're coming from, and like you went through some shit to make you think this way, I don't care what you're saying. I understand you've been through some shit. Like I'm on your side. Like I want to help you get through that. And if it's having an open conversation, showing respect to you, that's what I'm going to do. I'm not going to take it personal. You don't know my mama.
That's no, you're absolutely right, and it always comes down to how you feel about yourself. Now, this is a fact until a length of time proves it to be not a fact, but
Yeah.
it's science. Uh, but this is an easy science experiment you can do right away. Right when you're done watching this video, watch it to the end. Right when you're done watching this video, go outside. You can do this. However you feel about yourself is going to be a reflection on how you interact with other people. Here's a couple examples. If I feel like shit, like I just did something stupid, like crap, I did something wrong with the laundry, now everything's effed. Great. Now I feel like crap. Then I walk outside. I see my first person. They're gonna say, "Hi, Rick. Good morning." I'm gonna say, "F you," snarl at them, and then go off my business. Then I'm probably gonna flip people off while driving, and it's gonna be this glorious chain reaction of life. And now let's go back to the beginning. If I feel great about myself, I did something really good and whatnot, you're just about yourself, right? You're just proud. You walk outside and somebody's like, "Hey, Rick, you're an asshole." I'm like, "Hey, good morning." Right? You give him the double thumbs up and you kind of like, what is that? The Lego movies doing this little coffee thing. Everything's going to hell, but he's just all chippy. And then I'm in the car and I'm letting people go in front of me. Go ahead, go ahead.
Yeah.
Oh, I'll wait. I'm in no rush. So it's a totally different creature, but it's always that way of how you feel inside, and that's
Yeah.
a great lens that you put on there when somebody's kind of snarling at you and they're giving you a bunch of flack. You're like, wait a second, what's going on the inside? And
Mhm.
that awareness is huge, because you can be in any situation, and if you're shitty on yourself, then you're going to have that sort of reflection towards on how you deal with everything else.
Yeah, because I don't know if I feel like I have a pretty good pulse if I'm being an asshole or not. Like, and if someone's like reacting to me and I know I'm being an ass, like I can chalk it up as like I'm not being the best person right now. Like we're just going at it. Like they don't like me at this moment in time. But like if I'm going about things and I'm being like respectful and courteous and kind of stuff like that, and they're still going their direction, I know it's not me. Like I don't take that personal. So I find it to be very black and white for me. Like, hey, is this an attack on me? 90% no. But when it is, that's when I do get very like, I take it to heart, because if I'm trying my best and you're crossing that line to where now you're personally attacking me, and I know like that's the inner circle, that it's people in the inner circle that will get me to feel that way. Because if you're not constantly surrounding me and I don't like accept you into my life that much, um, I allow people to have their opinions, but it becomes more, like I said, a reflection on me. If this person's acting this way towards me and I was doing kind and courteous things, I chose to have this person around. Like this is the person I surround myself with. It's not so much a reflection on them. I always want people to be themselves. I don't want people to sugarcoat themselves around me. I don't want like I want people's truest self. And that's where it's my job. We talk about that filtering process. It's my job to filter out the people that I accept opinions from. I accept their time, their energy, they get mine. Um, so that's where it becomes more like personal for me, is I kind of messed up, not them. I surrounded myself with that toxicity kind of stuff.
Right. And when you are being true, it's so much easier when you recognize that difference to remove that person, to remove the situation.
Hmm.
If you're just kind of scrambling in your own swirl of it, then it's such a difficult battle. It's
Yeah.
really a losing battle. What did I say about the puppies thing? A little bit back, I saw this one gal. She goes into a store with her dog, and my son's asking me about it. He's like, Dad, why is she allowed to bring the dog? I'm like, oh, let me tell you this, son. And I'm trying to be a good parent, but boy, I blew it down the wrong road, because this. I'll get to the point, is the judgmental part, and I wound up having this sort of pet peeve, no pun intended. And I described it to him. I was like, yeah, well, they do it for this, for emotional support pets kind of thing, support animals. And that's when I realized I was talking to my cousin. He replied to me. He's like, do you need a hug? And I realized, I was like, yes, because it just grounded me. It's like, all right, dude, you done bitching? And that's
Yeah.
really what I translated it into. And I was like, yeah, I think I am done. And that's when the whole kind of like, somebody's got their own way of going about life. I've got my crazy things, I'm sure. I must look like a lunatic to everybody, or an idiot, maybe sometimes smart, but mostly just crazy. So we all
Hmm.
got our bag of crazy. And that's so respect for the other side. And that's when I was like, okay, you know what? That's really a good point. So I started
Yeah.
to kind of have that lens. And when you're talking about how we interact with other people, with that proper lens, that gives us so much more power in the situation. Instead of being pushed around by it, we can actually separate ourselves from it, or just kind of diffuse it much better. But when we throw our own ego up front and be like, no, 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 you're attacking me as whatever me is, then we're just two idiots banging heads.
Yeah. And that's the power of having the right people surround you. Somebody knows you, knows your morals, know that that's in your bag of crazy, and they call you out. They're like, "Are you done now? Like, are you done
Right?
projecting?
But
Are you
when he hit
done?
me with that, yeah, when he
Are
hit
you
me
done
with that, I
filling
was
your
like,
kid
yeah.
with some bullshit?"
But then afterwards, because it was funny, because I saw this chain reaction, I had that in my mind, and then I'm fixing the sink, and I forgot whatever that little stopper thing is. I took
Yeah.
that out. I'm cleaning it out. I'm running the sink water in, and it's still going out the back because I didn't put the damn thing back in. So you have a hole in your pipe. So underneath your sink, you just throw crap in there, right? So I have a big pile of crap getting filled with water. I'm like, oh shit. And then I left, and then I'm snarling at people in the store because I have to go get crap now to clean it back out. And I saw this chain reaction of all
Yeah.
these dumb events. So now I'm in traffic. Of course, I'm snarling at people in traffic. So it's not a make believe story. It's like real stuff that happened. Afterwards, that's when I had my son. I sat him down, like, hey, listen. And I showed him and talked it through my development. I was like, hey,
Yeah.
listen, we were first talking about this. Then I realized this. Then I started thinking about this. And he got that as well on how that decision process really impacted me. So I'm still going about it. Funny, emotions, thoughts, they're kind of like facts, but they change quicker.
They're facts until they're not.
Yeah, they're facts until they're not. But as long as I guess we're realizing this, it's okay to be like, oh, so and so's an asshole. But if it's okay as long as you're kind of developing and saying, wait a second, oh, I get it now. That's progress. Because there's gonna be plenty of things. A week from now, I'm guaranteeing it that I'm gonna be like, oh, you know what? I was an asshole last week because of A, B, and C.
Yeah.
But I will guarantee that when I realize it, I'm like, okay. And then I start building my new development. There's always kind of this path that we're all going on, but we have to be aware.
And I think the pandemic kind of helped people slow down a little bit. You know, they kind of it kind of forced people to live with themselves. And I think some people started when they started acting out, you started seeing that people weren't happy with themselves. They didn't
Mm.
like spending time with themselves. Not saying that that's everybody, because spending, especially if you like live by yourself, I know a couple people that like live on their own, and spending 4 months by yourself, not having human interaction, that is tough. But that the person I'm specifically thinking of um didn't act out like a dick. You know, like he took the opportunity to get into exercise, do mindfulness activities. And I think that's where you kind of make that choice. Are you going to let the pandemic get on top of you, or are you going to, fight against it? And I think a lot of people had the opportunity to come out a better version of themselves, but they chose not. They chose to go down that world of negativity. Let's blame it on everything else. And that's okay. But this is always my answer to that is, what did you expect to get out of it if that's the route you took? Did you expect to come out feeling better? You didn't do anything to feel better. And that's not being a dick. That's just more like, hey, if you didn't, that's what you preach all the time. The secret to success, surprise, it's work. If you didn't put in the work, like what did you expect to, if you're constantly complaining that the government's doing this, the government's doing that, well, unless the government is sitting on the couch right next to you, like bitching about the TV show you're watching, it ain't the government's fault for how you feel. Like,
Yeah, yeah. I'm glad you brought that up. Project yourself. One of my things, and this is a funny fear, I'll laugh at it later, but right now it's obviously regret. Project yourself into the future, to go off of what you're just saying. Project yourself in the future and look back. Let's say this thing's going to be all done and clear. What are they saying? 2021 or something weird. Let's say January. All done. Everybody's high five and we made it. All right, fine. January, now look back and say, well, what did you do with your time? If you had free time,
yeah,
if you had that opportunity, what did you do with it? Project yourself in the future as hard as you can with your imagination and look back. And then say to yourself, ah, shit, I should have done A, B, and C. Whatever it is, get that into your mindset right away. And then snap back into it and be like, oh crap, I'm still here. I still have a chance. It's never going to be, for the most part, too late to still say, okay, well, what can I do with my time? What can
hmm
I do? Do I want to start playing an instrument? Do I want to start working on a video series, right?
yeah.
Reignite some cool discussions that we used to have way back in the year. But just anything. But try that exercise, whatever format that works for you, so you can say, well, what could I have done? Otherwise,
Absolutely.
own it. You have to own it. Nobody else's fault.
Yeah. I know for me, and I know this is a weird subject, especially for men to talk about. But I always talk about how I suffered from like depression and stuff growing up, and anxiety. But I never really was doing much about it except taking it upon myself. I was like, okay, I'm going to work out more. I'm going to do this. I'm going to find my things I fall back on. And something I did in the beginning of quarantine was, okay, I was like, I'm going to do a 30-day workout series, like 30 days, 30 workouts to see how I feel. And I started to realize, like, hey, this isn't kind of the correlation that one once was. Like, this used to make me feel better. Um, so I did something I never did. With the encouragement of my girlfriend, I went and I talked to a psychiatrist. And talking to a psychiatrist, I was then prescribed a low dose of antidepressants. And I've now been on the antidepressant for going on almost a month now. And it is night and day. And that's something I think, it just based off what we're talking about. What did you expect if you didn't put in that work? And that's obviously, like, I've done 10 years or plus of doing things my way, and I keep going back to square one, square one, square one. So, like I said, having the right team surround me, having the right people support, because God knows I've made some terrible impulsive decisions. Um, but this is something, like, I hopefully I can help normalize that, talking to people about mental health and going on at least the right prescribed antidepressants and stuff like that, is it's a chemical imbalance, man. And I think, that's something that people have to be willing to put the work in, be comfortable with, accepting that you might need a little bit of a hand getting through some shit. So that's something I know with the pandemic, I was able to conquer. I was able to I always tell people to talk to therapists and, go through that mental health journey. But I wasn't doing the things I said to do. Like, I didn't talk to a psychiatrist. So, no, that's just something I know with this pandemic. It made me really, really analyze, like, hey, what are you putting work into? Like, what are you going to look back like, hey, I should have did this then. And that's something I didn't want to regret, is passing up that time where I could have really been getting myself adjusted to, like, taking pills. Like, that's something I don't do.
Yeah, no, and I agree with you on the whole kind of substitution part. Uh, you got to find out. You're not. It takes much longer to just go through the dark and try to find out what's the solution, what's going to work out. As you kind of find things that do work, then you learn more about yourself. Then you
Hmm.
learn more about the connections and whatnot. And then it starts to be more of a development thing, to
Yeah.
where you can grow into the absence of. But until then, you have to be aware of it first. And
Hmm.
it takes a lot. You're right. It takes a whole lot more time to kind of just feel through the dark and guess your way
Yeah.
through it if you want to really just find a solution.
Yeah, and it just really comes back to your main point. Like, what are you doing with the time you have been gifted? And that's something I think, because we talked, I think it was really early in the pandemic, is we kind of were just reaching out to each other, seeing what was going on and kind of just checking in. And that's something we were kind of like both on the same page, is like, hey, if we're on shutdown, like, what are we going to do? Like, what is the move? Like, we see opportunity, we don't see this, opportunity to complain. And that's something I'm really happy we kind of went in this route, and we decided our big thing is we like to help people. We want to, help people get through those tough times. And I think especially sharing, like, personal journeys like that, I'm never going to go into specifics about who and, drop names and stuff like that, when it comes to the tough stuff. But I'll definitely, like, bring up the struggles that we all go through, because I don't want people to think like it's just them going through stuff. Like, if anything, this should have shown the world, like, hey, we're all going through this together. There's people that are going to come out on top and better, and there's also people that are going to take this opportunity to really, really crawl into a paper bag and not come out of it. You know?
It's our own choices. I think we nailed this in the first 5 minutes when we were talking about science. Because I
I'm
keep
so happy
getting,
you bringing this up.
well,
I
it's
can't wait
it's
till my
it's
girlfriend watches this.
it's true, because nothing's changed. We're only squirming because the environment is now different. What I mean by that is, we think that something's going to be a fact forever. All right, I got this certain job, I got this certain situation, here we go, and it's going to last forever. And then when something shifts, we squirm and we're like, oh no, what are we going to do? It's, guess what? 5 to 10 years, something else is going to change everything.
Yeah.
What are you going to do about it? How are you going to adapt and whatnot? So we just, knowing that when you go into the change, you're going to be in a much better place.
You said it in one of our first episodes. You teach your kid, like, I'm not going to be here forever. Like, my car is not going to be here forever. And it's almost like learning that you have to anticipate things are not, you have to know that, like, that attachment you have isn't so much a physical attachment. It's an emotional attachment. And you have
Right.
to be okay with enjoying the time you have it. So just like what we said with the pandemic, it's going to go away at some point. We don't know what time, but right now we can enjoy what we have of it instead of focusing on all the bad things. I love that me and my girlfriend became closer, that we went through some stuff together, and like we still love the shit out of each other. Like, I'm been trying so much more since you brought that up, like things are going to go away. And since I've kind of understood that more, I appreciate things so much more. I appreciate the moment. I appreciate, when I do my check-ins, I sit here, I'm like, okay, I'm sitting here talking to a really good friend of mine, trying to help people, living in an apartment with a girl I love. And once you start listing that stuff, you're like, holy shit, I'm lucky. Like, I could say I'm stuck in Florida with the most cases of corona. I'm surrounded by a bunch of boneheads, people that don't know what's going on, people not wearing masks, yada, yada, yada. That's not how I choose to look at it. Like, I get to play video games with my best friends and family. That's how I stay in contact. That doesn't change. The only thing I miss is seeing family. But as long as they're happy and healthy, I enjoy the moment.
Even when this pandemic is gone, if that is ever a thing, a whole lot's changed forever.
Mm-hmm.
You're not always going to have this couch, this detachment. You can't cling on to it, because don't even cling on to a fact.
Yeah.
Because we already know that stuff is going to change over time. The earth was flat. Now it's round.
We're going to find out that it's triangle soon.
Yeah, eventually it's going to be that. They're going to say, you know what, the calculation of the deflection of stuff.
Aliens exist, and people haven't said shit.
Aliens?
Yeah, the government just willingly was like, hey, aliens now exist. We lied. And everyone's like,
I knew it was the government this whole time.
Right? Like, come on. Like, it's a detachment. Guys, understand things are not locked in stone. Things are going to change. And once you are okay with that, you will be much better off and much happier. Hopefully.
Exactly. Always how we react to it. And then having that inner peace of understanding that it's okay for you, and being able to respect other people, because they're all recognizing the change as well. And it's just how we really take it and how we feel on the inside.
Absolutely. And guys, I know we all have gone through different ups and downs during this pandemic and are going to continue going through it. So if you're watching this video, tell us what your biggest struggle with this pandemic is. And also, I always like to add this into, let us know who's helped you the most through this pandemic. If you want to tag them, let them know, give them some love and support, because by letting them know, maybe that's kind of the boost they need to be like, hey, you know what, I've had a positive impact during a really tough time. So let us know in the comments what has been your biggest struggle during the pandemic, and who has been your number one supporter to help you get out of those struggles.
And also,
I think we've been going for like an hour, so
I think
we should probably wrap this up.
Yep. And also the comment part. If you want to hear about a comment, a topic that you want us to do, throw in the comment section, and we can tackle it next time.
Absolutely. So King_, thank you very much for this topic. We talked for what feels like to be over an hour, and it just felt very good. So awesome topic. Thank you again. So guys, leave your comments below. Remember to subscribe, comment, like, share, ring the bell, everything that everyone else says on YouTube. And guys, I hope we were able to help, and I hope you guys have an awesome rest of your day, week, month, year, and life.
All right. Take care, guys. Till the next epidemic.
Till the next epidemic.
Pandemic.
The next epitope.